Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 5th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, Eric Donovan.
4 races to bring you on this week's segment, all turf races. We'll get things started with the 7th race from June 27th, a 35 claimer going a mile on the turf. We're interested in Rover, who gets compromised at the start here.
Yeah, kind of gets steadied back in one of those situations where it'll only get worse from there. The other horse, Balance the Budget, we'll get to later. His sort of situation arrives more around the turn, but Rover's a horse, just compromised badly. It starts completely drops out of the race. I thought did a very good job getting back into the race.
Yeah, I agree. I got to give Rosina Pravnik a lot of credit here because she didn't panic and she didn't, try to rush her back into the race. Instead, it was more of a gradual move back into the race, and eventually she'll find herself right behind the two, who's the last horse on the screen, who's the winner of the race, Thomas Hill.
Yeah, and Thomas Hill actually. Thomas Hill, in some ways ran the best race. I think Rover ran the best race. But Thomas Hill did run well because it wasn't a particularly great ride. And actually, this was a somewhat controversial race when a lot of people were surprised there wasn't an inquiry in here. You could see him cutting off another horse in here, the one horse, Namron, with Ramon Dominguez. Balance the Budget. I think Balance the Budget gets skunked when Thomas Hill makes that quick brush. Now, you've seen Rover has already caught up, which is kind of miraculous. Balance the Budget's here. Thomas Hill's actually outside of Rover. When Thomas Hill makes that sort of quick rush to leave, Balance the Budget sort of instinctually goes with him, but he can't keep up, and I think that ends up sort of getting him stayed out of the race and might have kind of cost him the race.
Well, I think there was a point in the turn where Balance the Budget's jockey could have been a little bit more aggressive to keep his position because it seemed like he slipped back a spot there around the turn. I don't know if that would have made a difference or not, but right here is what you're talking about, and the horse makes the move on the outside. The Balance the Budget's kind of stuck in behind the horse.
Wide. Well, he's wide. I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I just don't think he had the acceleration that Thomas Hill, who's more of a sprinter type, seemed to have a quicker burst than he did.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there you see he tries to angle back inside. And Rover, who's trying to make up some ground down toward the inside here in about the 5th right now, has some traffic issues in the stretch, and they're going to kind of be more magnified late in the stretch. Rover is really rolling along nicely here in a race that, aside from the start, Rosie did a great job here. Saved a lot of ground, didn't panic at any point in the race. She just ran into some traffic issues. Even if she didn't have the traffic issues in the stretch, I think she might have won, despite the best start.
I hear what you're saying. It's an odd race because Rover ran the best race simply because of what happened at the start. The winner ran very well because he made that premature wide move. Balance the Budget, he got sort of caught when the winner made that wide move. So each one of these horses sort of had its own trouble. Now, I don't know where you go forward. And the problem, here's the Rover situation. Well, Mystical Star had that bad start, situation and came back and won our stake this weekend and paid a square price. I guess it really depends what price they are, but all of them ran pretty well in their own right.
No, absolutely. And I think it all depends on what kind of field Rover ends up in next time out. You got to imagine that the Rover will be in, a race at Saratoga that comes up fairly salty, and maybe you get the fair price like you did on the Clermont Stakes winner last week.
And I think the other question you have to ask yourself is maybe it wasn't that good a race if all these horses, did they all run really well, or did they all just sort of run well or not a very strong race? And once again, it becomes a question of price and who the competition is.
All right, we'll move along here and check out a now winners of one allowance for 3-year-olds going a mile and a 16th on the inner turf course. We're going to pick it up with the head-on as they move into the first turn.
We're talking about the 4 Forever Faithful, but mostly the 6 COEXIST. Now, COEXIST is on the outside. Forever Faithful is inside of him, and he badly interferes with him around the turn. This is that tough mile and a 16th on the inner situation. You see him going around there, and you see COEXIST going to the back and Forever Faithful sort of going towards the lead. Now, Forever Faithful ended up getting eased, but it's a situation where COEXIST was sort of doubly skunked by Forever Faithful. Now, the most important thing at the start is if Forever Faithful breaks slowly, COEXIST is out here, and Forever Faithful was the absolute speed in this race. He's a sprinter stretching out and was supposed to be the speed. When he broke a little slowly, it compromised him. Then when the rider sort of steadies him back here, compromises him more, now he's going to get inside of the 6, and this is actually the pan of what we show you in the head-on, because he gets inside of the 6 and he forces him out farther and sort of makes his life even more miserable. He was supposed to be in front going fast, setting the race up for COEXIST. Instead, he didn't do that, and he kind of got in his way early in the race. It's sort of amazing.
And there he goes, that big rush. Once he got clear, the rider just couldn't hold Forever Faithful. But the other thing to consider here is that you lose some ground on that first turn with COEXIST, and the way the race unfolds here, Yari, the 3 horse, is the winner. The 5 horse Purest Form is in second right now,
40-1,
and the 8 English Major, who's up close to the pace, is going to finish 4th in here. So the pace does hold on pretty well in this race. COEXIST loses ground on the first turn and is way back.
Yeah, he's interfered with. It's just to me, it's a very interesting example of how much can go wrong in a horse race. And in a way, Forever Faithful, who, yes, I understand he got ease, but you got to get away from that. He was the most important horse in the race for COEXIST going in, and he ended up being this enormous thorn in his side. As you see, COEXIST is all the way to the back of the pack as Forever Faithful's being eased. Now, Forever Faithful's probably not a turf horse, but he has some pedigree. Who knows? With the start and the whole situation, it was just so ridiculous. But COEXIST is in a situation where he has no chance. He's out there 3-4 wide. He ends up ducking towards the inside, but the race is over. The race is over for him 100 yards into the race, and I think COEXIST is a better horse than this. He just feels like the kind of horse, if he can get in the right race at Saratoga, where he's got some pace to run into a fairly run race. If you liked him in this race, which I did, but forgetting about that, you can dismiss this race completely.
Yeah, what I like about it here is that he's not really finishing up like strongly, so that'll get you the better price next time out. Because considering the way he lost ground on that first turn, and the fact that the pace really held up in this race, you don't want to see a horse rallying and just missing by a nose or a neck if you want to bet the next time out.
No, I agree. I'm already committed. I'm all in on COEXIST. I hope he gets into the right spot. Thought this was just a great example of horse racing and bad luck.
Take a look at some 2-year-olds right now. A 2-year-old filly maiden special weight race going 6 furlongs on the wider. The 8 Priscilla Maria, very well-bred first-time starter here from the Dale Romans barn.
Yeah, and this is a half to Little Mike, but also Little Nick, who is a very competent turf sprinter. And I guess we're talking about right here, right? Is Priscilla Marie? I got to tell you, this horse looks to me, I mean, listen, when we're running 2-year-old races here at Belmont, and even early at Saratoga, I think you have to pay attention to horses that run okay but clearly needed a race. And Priscilla Marie appears to me to be a horse that needed a race.
I agree. I think she's green throughout most stages of the racing here, kind of runs in spots a little bit here, and just gives Javier Castellano a tough time throughout. I mean, Javier seems like he's just in a spot where he wants to get her involved in the game, but she's not really going, and then she kind of gets back into it a little bit here. Just a horse that seemed to overreact to every move Javier made, and I think a horse that will definitely benefit from the experience.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting also is they come in the stretch, and you see her sort of angling to the 2-path right now to go around a horse. You would think he would be hitting left-handed because he would want to go around if possible. But instead, as you watch Javier back here, he's hitting this horse right-handed. So she's lugging in towards the inside. Well, why would you want to be in there? And then at that point, he's like, okay, now I'm not going to be my right hand, so I don't want to go over the rail, but I'm going to get off. But it just feels like this was a horse that just needed to get a race under her belt before she ran her best start. And listen, Little Mike may not be a 1.25 mile horse, but he's a horse that can go a mile to even a 1 1/8. A very good horse. I'll be interested to see what Dale Romans does to this horse. Does he go 5.5 again at Saratoga? Does he look for 1 mile and a 16th in one of these races? But I'm convinced that Princess Marie is a much better horse than her finish suggests.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought this was actually a pretty solid maiden race as well. Almost an Angel had some experience, and certainly looked like the horse to beat the winner. And Apple Cider was a nice looking firster from Christophe Clement. So this looks like a good field.
And I even three Hearts, the half to Pluck, who finished 4th in this race. There's a lot of pedigree in here, a lot of high-profile trainers that do well. I agree. This was an unusually good-looking field going in. I won't be surprised to see it be productive as well.
Let's take our final stop here at Belmont on race number 8 from June 30th. The maiden special weight for 3-year-olds and up going a mile on the turf. We're going to take a look at Input, horse trying the turf for the first time for Belmont.
Yeah, and gets badly sort of left and shuffled out of the race. And you see the rider, Junior Alvarado, sort of trying to urge her after that, or urge him, and really probably no reason for that. He might have frankly been better off doing what Rosie did with Rover and just being a little more patient to start. I also thought the winner, who's back here right now, Unbridled Fire, who got a very good trip, but this was such a confident ride by Alan Garcia.
It was a confident ride, and when you're riding horses for Kieran McLaughlin and getting on the turf for the first time that have had some dirt race experience, you can be pretty confident because Kieran's pretty good with that move. But certainly a race that looked like had some talent from top to bottom, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were a couple of next-out winners that come out of this race here. Input just not in the ball game here early on. But one thing to note about this race, the pace was pretty quick in here, 22-1, 45-1. It seems to come apart a little bit here. So the fact that that Input was toward the back of the pack and got off slowly there might have actually helped him a little bit.
I understand. I wouldn't say it helped him, but it certainly didn't hurt him dramatically. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree. You got to be careful. I mean, the speed was last. The second horse was second to last. Even the 9-5 favorite, Native Wave, finished 8th, stalking in 3rd. So this race, as you pointed out, was an absolute collapse. You have to be careful that dynamics can make horses look better than they are, even if they have trouble.
And I think there's Input right there. So Input will he'll circle and they'll make eventually a big run to be second here. The big part of the run really doesn't come until I would say the last 16th of a mile, though, which is kind of not the run you want when you want to bet horses back, because everyone else is seeing that this horse got left and made a big run for blast. And first time on the turf, well, probably will improve second time on the turf.
And it's Bill Mott and it's Judd Mott, so this horse has way over bet written all over it. Having said that, what happens in a fairly run race when input breaks cleanly from the gate? Because it is Bill Mott. You know that these horses in his barn, they do such a good job that they're not going to continually display these bad habits. Unless you have a horse that was breaking from down on the inside in its first start, which doesn't help at all. So he's going to improve with maturity, but I agree with you. I just wouldn't go overboard next time he runs, because he's got the look of a 6-5 shot at Saratoga.
Yeah, absolutely. And the races at Saratoga can be run a little bit differently. I think a lot of the times you don't get, especially, a mile on the wider here, you don't get paces like that up at Saratoga with the two-turn races. It seems like they're generally a little bit slower.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of race he gets in. But I agree with you. He just may be a little overrated off of this start. He might turn out to be a very good horse, but I wouldn't jump on the bandwagon just yet because he got left and was closing in a race that collapsed. Want to remind people, first of all, we always need your help. We like your comments, trips, and trap at NYRAinc.com.
And also a reminder that this will be our final show for about 3 weeks. We'll see you up at Saratoga. Andy's off next week. Of course, we start racing Saratoga on Friday, July 20th. So we'll need about a week to get some races under our belt up there so we can bring you some good trips and traps. Looking forward to that first episode from Saratoga.
July 26th is the day we have circled on our calendar for the first Saratoga trips and traps.